Welcome to the Strength Coach Experience podcast. I'm your host, Joe Lego, and here we go. Okay, ready? Welcome everyone to the Strength Coach Experience, episode 16. Today I want to welcome Mike Guadango, owner, operator of Freak Strength, also co-host of the Mike and Brooker podcast, a wonderful podcast there. Be sure to check that out. Mike, love having you on. Appreciate the time, man, and just welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, bro. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So why don't we just go right into things, and we'll just start off how you got involved in strength conditioning.
So growing up, I was always the smallest kid. The movie Rudy comes to mind. Two movies come to mind: Rocky and Rudy. Being the paisan from Jersey, of course I love Rocky. I was always inspired by Rocky, just always watching the training montages, and always being the smallest kid in class. Rudy was huge for me. My mom used to just put on Rudy all the time. Just like, gotta have more heart, Mike. You're small, but you gotta have more heart. So I was always working my ass off. I played all sports growing up, but towards the end of my development, I started leaning more towards wrestling and baseball. And I started wrestling at a real young age, and as a result of that, I got hurt a lot. So I'd have 2-3 trips to the ER just about every season. And I mean, as a result of that, by my freshman year of high school, I got an MRI on my shoulder. It was 2 weeks before season started. And the doctor said I had a slap tear. And then back then, the way that they repaired a slap tear, they were doing experimental stuff. They did a heat shrinkage of the posterior capsule to create stability. They don't do that anymore.
No, yeah, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's outrageous, right? But my shoulder ended up being okay all the way up until my senior year of college. Game one of my senior year of college, I blew out my shoulder big time. And what went on me? The posterior capsule of my shoulder, the same shoulder. But
guess the heat treatment didn't work.
It worked for almost 10 years, right? It held up, and I abused the shit out of my arm, but there was finally something had to give. But the slap repair was still in place. The rotator cuff wasn't bad, but the capsule tore, and it really jacked me up. But all throughout my high school career, grade school career, college career, I was always injured. So I was always in rehab, and you're a product of the things you do most. So I did a lot of rehab and I did a lot of working out. So here I am. That's kind of how I got to where I am.
Yeah, I think that's great. You are a product of what happens, and same thing, the story with me. I got hurt in high school playing basketball. I got hurt in college. I blew my back out, deadlifting, heard a nice little pop. And then, 15 years old, I couldn't move. I had radiating pain. I now know it was, piriformis tightness and sciatica. But for 4 months, I just kind of walked around. I didn't know what to do. And, and finally I went to PT, and they asked me if I stretched. And I was like, stretch? I'm 15. We don't stretch. We don't do that. We do bicep curls at the end of workouts, and then going into JUCO, I tore up my groin, and same thing, people held their hands up. So kind of the same thing, you spend a lot of time getting injured. Eventually, I think you want to learn why, how, and kind of figure out how to fix those injuries and prevent others from doing those things.
Yep. Yeah, that was my why, I guess. But one of the other things too, it worked out to my benefit. Because I was injured so much, I knew a ton of stuff even prior to getting into strength and conditioning. I was always I was always around really, really smart people. So back when I started training, like seriously, my dad had already trained my brother in our basement, and my dad's a CFO, or was a CFO, type A personality, researched the hell out of everything. So he started buying powerlifting magazines because my brother was unathletic. I was athletic. He was unathletic. He worked hard. I never really worked hard when I was younger because I didn't have to until I started getting hurt. Um, and my dad ended up coming across Louis Simmons.
Oh, love Louis Simmons.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I was 10 years old. I knew who Louis Simmons was. We used to listen to his VHS tapes. And I mean, it was before
Wow.
Louis had microphones. It's literally like someone took a camera,
Those are
camcorder,
fantastic.
propped it up on like some like book. You know what I mean? And Louis just sat there and he talked the whole time with this horrible echo. And you did, and we do the Paul Dix press and Scotty Peterson. That you know what I mean? Like it was.
Those are
It was,
amazing. The videos are fantastic. If anybody out there didn't listen to them, you have to buy or listen to a Louis Simmons. Oh my God, his voice is great.
So as a 10-year-old, that's what I grew up on. And this was even before, you know, I had met DeFranco, who popularized it for you know the average Joe population, for the athlete population, with his West Side for Skinny Bastards. So I knew who Louis Simmons was way back. And my dad, knowing about training, I'm a pain in the ass. My dad and I are very similar, and my brother will listen to him. I won't. So my dad was like, I can't fucking train you. This is brutal. Like he wanted to hit me he hit me a couple of times. Every single time we would work out, he just got tired of it. So, and I was injured enough, and I was always in physical therapy enough, that he had the sense to say, well, let me hire the physical therapist to train you. So the PT had never really done personal training like that before. He's a physical therapist. So he said, yeah, sure, you know, $30 a session. And I'd come in as, I don't know, a 13-year-old kid. I'd get there at 6 a.m. before school, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'd work out at their gym. It was a part of the PT's name is Alan Roth. He owned Millennial Physical Therapy. Guy's awesome. I to this day, I still learn a ton from him. And he was a part, Millennial Physical Therapy was part of World's Gym. Like they had rented space from there, so we had access to the gym. So I would go there before school, work out with him. He'd write me a workout. I'd go and I'd do it. I'd shower, and then I'd go to school. So as like a 13-year-old kid, I'd wake up at 5:30 in the morning, be at the gym by 6, have a protein shake, and this is an undersized kid, and then go to school. So this was just my life from day one.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, and I think it's, you know, a blessing to be graced with Louis Simmons at 10. You know, I didn't find him till I was 20. Anybody out there who doesn't know who that is, he's an absolute legend. And if you get the chance, listen to his podcast. He still makes them. Listen to everything he says. He's extremely entertaining and extremely smart as well. But yeah, no, like I said, you know, you start working out early. I think it kind of gets ingrained, and it's something that stays with you. You know, a lot of strength coaches, you know, I talked to Chris, you know, episode 4 and a few other people. We all started early, you know, and we did it on accident. It was just, we needed something else to do to get better at what we did. And there it was, you know, and then we just kind of got ingrained in that. So why don't we go through first time walking into DeFranco's? How was that like? And kind of the things you did with him?
You know, it was funny. I worked out at this gym called Odyssey in Waldwick, and it was a local gym in my area. It was right by my high school, and I saw these guys like going in and out of the back room, and that's where DeFranco's was. It was in Odyssey in Waldwick, in a storage closet, like a 500 square foot storage closet. And I was a baseball player. I loved doing forearm stuff. And DeFranco had these big meaty forearms. It was this bald dude with like perfect eyebrows and big meaty forearms. Like, oh, this guy, he's got big forearms. All right, I guess maybe I'll check him out. Maybe I'll see what they have to offer. And then I also saw a couple of kids who ended up becoming friends of mine, but I ended up getting in fights with them. Or like early on, I used to try to fight everyone, and people used to try to fight me. I was a real jerk off. So,
well, I think we've all been there, you know.
So one of the kids that I got in a fight with, or was supposed to get in a fight with, or we didn't like each other, he went to DeFranco's too, and he was a big jack dude and like one of those tough guys. I was like, yeah, fuck it, I could go there. Like, let me give this a shot. So I went in, I talked to Joe, he set me up, and it was cool. I ended up becoming one of like, not the main guys, I guess, right away, but like a staple, because I'm a dedicated dude. So I'd go 3-4 days a week. I would never miss, and I was one of their main guys there early on. And I mean, from Joe's storage closet, we ended up going to, or I wasn't working there at that point. He ended up going to a 2,500 square foot warehouse space, and Joe was probably one of the first people to pioneer the warehouse gym, and that was in Wyckoff. And shit, I think it was 2004 or 2003 that Joe and I synced up, and then he ended up going there in like 2006.
Yeah, that's everywhere now. I don't think a lot of people don't remember the time when most of them start off in a closet, or they do some satellite stuff in a little place, and now everybody remembers, now every facility you go into is an airplane hangar.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but I think that's how it should be done. I mean, it's great to have a nice gym. I had a guy on my podcast. His name is Ben Prentice, and Ben has the nicest fucking gym I've ever seen. Prentice Sports Performance, the nicest gym I've ever seen for like a private gym. It's incredible. It is so nice. It's pristine. He's spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment, and God only knows how much, like, making everything perfect. He's got like a six picture mural. Like that weird picture of Marilyn Monroe that's in like all these different tones.
Yeah, with the lipstick and the white dress. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's in all these. There's like I don't know. It's like six different colors.
Every girl on Instagram has it. That's an influencer. Yeah, they all have it on their purse or their sweatshirt or.
So he has that of his dog, a huge thing. I was like, man, and then he's got this huge, probably, I don't know, 5x10, maybe even longer, big patch of moss hanging on his wall. Like, it is absolutely beautiful. I love his gym, but my gym is nothing like that. DeFranco's was nothing. Joe's gym is nicer, like more manicured than my gym is. But I like the grunginess. Like, I love beautiful and I love grunge. You know what I mean? So I think a warehouse gym, a grungy gym is where it's at. I mean, that's where you get fucking tough. That's where you get strong. Like basement lifting, lifting in a garage. That's the way to go.
I completely agree. I'm a big proponent of that. The Ronnie Coleman gym, I love, the Dorian Yates videos where he goes into the kind of cellar. I think those gyms are great. And you're right. It kind of shapes what you're going to do. The nice gyms are good, and you want to have some time to go in there. But for the most part, I think the gym is kind of what sets up your what you're going to do and kind of that mindset. I mean, we talked about Louis before. His gym he was in a garage, broken windows and dirt on the ground. And my favorite part is he welded 245 plates to the bar. And if you couldn't squat, if you couldn't start at 225, you couldn't lift there, and he just kind of, so it was crazy, but that's how it was. And I 100% agree with that. You need that to set mindset. Some people don't need that, but I think having that grunge, if you will, is something that really helps. You need nice, you want to have nice things, certain, you want to make sure the AED works, but for the most part, I don't think you need too much craziness.
Yeah, there was a story that Thinker told me, James the Thinker Smith, brilliant dude. You guys whoever's listening to this should check him out. He's next level. He told me a story of the Bulgarians. He said the Bulgarians lifted in a storage container. Right? The storage containers that are on the side that they're making houses at? That's what they used to lift it. Like, and it was a fucking mess, right? And whenever one of them would max out, they wouldn't say a word. They'd just raise their hand. Everyone would shut the hell up, and they'd lift their balls off, and that's when they would max out and they'd go crazy. Then they ended up moving to a building, and the building had like broken windows and didn't have heat. And it was like a tenement, right? And they said, "Oh no, this is too upscale for us."
We need to go back to the storage unit.
Yeah. I mean, it's some of the most badass. No, don't get me wrong. I've trained some really, really badass dudes, really awesome athletes, and they love pristine stuff. And to have the nice stuff is so cool. But the old, the Italian in me with Rocky IV versus Ivan Drago. I love
favorite part. Yep.
I love the old school. He's training in a horse barn. I friggin' love that.
Yeah, I love that. I think anybody out there, same thing, the way growing up, the Italian way, I think when I watched it too, I was like, I kind of want to go to Russia and live in a cabin. Like, I'll probably want to kill myself after about 3 days, but it was always there. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. I should try to run in the snow with a tree on my back and see how far I get, but love that part. So why don't we go right into that when, you're at the Francos, you're doing your thing. Why don't we talk about a little bit when you went to Pitt, you interned with, Buddy Morris and James Smith.
So I started at the Francos. I started as an athlete there. Then maybe my freshman year of college, I was there so much. Joe had just hired a new trainer, and the new trainer no-showed. And Joe looked at me and goes, "Hey, listen, I'm busy. Do you want to take this kid?" I was like, "Oh, fuck yeah, I want to take this kid. Like, I'll fucking train him." So I don't even know if I got paid. I don't think I got paid. It didn't matter. I was so excited to train people. I was like, "Fuck yes, yeah, I'll train them." And I did little fill-in sessions here and there for situations like that when I was probably 21, 22 years old. I mean, Joe trusted me. He knew I knew his system inside and out. He knew I wouldn't do anything too stupid with the kid. And the kid is actually, I believe he's a coach right now with the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was like 13 years ago.
The networking circles in this field are insane because I've had people come up to me at schools when I was in the minor leagues and like say hi to me, and I coached them 12 years ago, and I'm like, "You got drafted? You were terrible." I mean, I didn't want to be mean, but I'm like, really?
So I started training him. Well, I trained him one session. I didn't even train him consistently. And then I do fill-ins. Then before you knew it, I had a couple of steady clients even while I was in school. And it was nothing crazy, but I was working while I was in school, and Joe was really cool with, hey, can I borrow this DVD? Can I borrow that DVD? He was cool with letting me learn as much as I possibly could outside of his system. And then when I graduated college, that summer, I worked my ass off. I saved a ton of money, and I took 6 months off after that, and I went to Pitt. And I had emailed, and who was at Pitt was Buddy Morris and James Smith, James the Thinker Smith, who I just talked about. Buddy Morris, the fucking legend. The legend. I had him on the podcast. He's phenomenal. He's hilarious. He's like a big brother to me. He and I get along. We're honestly, like, we argue like big and little brother. My time with him and James changed my fucking life. So before I went to Pitt, I was under the assumption that Joe DeFranco was the best strength coach of all time. Like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I just knew what I read on Joe's website. I didn't know there was much outside. And prior to going to Pitt, I read all of Buddy's Q&As. I went on Elite FTS and I read absolutely everything. I think DeFranco had a whole bunch of notes he gave me. I read absolutely everything. And then when I went to Pitt, my first day, James Smith rocked my world when he just dropped knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb and let me know how much I just did not know. And I was like, holy fuck. I got so upset. I was like, I need to leave. I'm completely out of my league. But because I had coaching experience, I was the only intern there that was allowed to coach groups. I was allowed to coach guys by myself. Hey, Mike, walk them through all this stuff. We don't need to worry about you. Go do it. Right. And I had groups of guys that they let me coach. And the things that I learned there completely changed the way that I coached forever. Like, those were two of the best coaches that I've ever been around.
Great to hear. That's always the best, when you start off in the field, and, the people that you ended up starting with end up becoming your mentors, and you're close. And I think you bring up something that's great. That summer you talked about, wanting to work, and it didn't matter if you don't get paid. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people that get into it now don't understand, that when we start off doing this, we don't care about money. We just want to train teams and everything else. And the other thing you brought up, is that when you train at a place, you have to get that experience and you have to go out, because the same for me when I was at LIU, when I went to TCU in the summer of 2012, I thought everybody did everything at LIU and that was the end of it, and then Zach, who I had on the last podcast at TCU, he was like, no, why do you do this stuff? And then you're like, I don't know, because we do it over here and that's everything that I know. And he's like, well, you need to figure out kind of what works for you, and that's how you learn. And I think the best part is you need to be around people that just make you in awe, that make you want to go home because you aren't anywhere near their level. That's the type of people that, everybody should try to surround themselves with, because that's how we get better.
I couldn't agree more. I thrive being the underdog. I don't necessarily thrive being the big dog on, I even in college, before anyone knew who I was, that's when I did the best sports wise. Once I started getting better and getting recognition, I don't know. I just didn't thrive under that type of stuff. So me being around people that are better than me makes me perform so much better. I'm going to say I play down to my competition, but I think everyone does in some way or another. You just get content. So by always having people that are shitting on you knowledge wise, doesn't matter what walk of life they're from. As long as they're that much smarter than you, they're going to push you. It's a rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah, of course. And it's not something I don't think you can prevent against either. You can be the most driven person, but if you're around people and that growth isn't there, you're just not gonna, you kind of shut down. And I think that's for me, in the minor leagues, we didn't really do much. We didn't do much knowledge stuff. I had Mike Borowitz there, thank God. And he was that person for me. He would just blow me away every day. But I think that's, a big important thing. You have to be around people that are going to push you continuously, because that contempt thing, you're going to stay there naturally. So I think that's a big, very, very important thing. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room, or you at least want to make sure that you're challenged on a daily basis.
100%.
Let's keep going through the interning at Pitt. First day there, get knowledge bombs dropped on you, and then we'll move on to some of the philosophies and the things you learned over there.
So I went to Pitt with like $10,000 or $12,000 in my account, and I went there for 6 months, and I worked for free. Everything I did there was for free, and I was there at 5:30 in the morning, and I would leave if I could at 10 o'clock at night. And everything that Buddy said, I would fucking write down, or I would think about and let it just, and it wouldn't keep me up at night because I was dead tired by the end of the day. But I'd definitely go home and I'd research everything that he said. James would constantly give me a barrage of things to just Google and learn and constantly grow as much as possible. And training there was probably to this day one of the best times of my life. And I tried taking them out to dinner every opportunity I could, paid for everything I possibly could for them because I wanted them to like me. I think it's really important, and this is something that's kind of missed, is when you want something from someone, you need to earn it, right?
Yes.
How you can't just expect someone to give it to you because you fucking showed up and you do kind of a good job. Like, how are you going to get someone to like you and appreciate you and remember you? It's doing the extra stuff. We had a kid that this year, Aiden, that was he started off in our gym as one of Ryan Nye's clients. Ryan Nye is one of my coaches at Freak Strength, and he started off as a baseball player, high school, college a little bit, then stopped doing it, and now he just works out. And he wanted to intern for us, and he said to me, he goes, "My goal is to be the best intern you ever had." I said, "Good fucking luck." I said, you shouldn't hold yourself to that kind of standard, because the best intern I ever had was, I have one of my interns is currently Colin Kaepernick's trainer. Another one of my interns has a super successful powerlifting strongman gym, Olympic lifting gym in Australia. So the one guy is Josh Hidalgo. He trains Colin Kaepernick. Dan Wallington, He's in Australia. I have Alex Brooker, who's the co-host of my podcast, who wrote on DeFranco's website before I did. Kid's getting his doctorate in psychology. Like these are really elite people. There's no reason why you should try to compete with them. And they all actually. Josh didn't have any coaching experience prior to me, but he was a phenomenal intern. And those three aren't even the best, right? Like they're in a class. I don't know if I had a best intern. I said, so for you to compete with them, it's just nutty. But what did this motherfucker do? He had a goal. He set the goal, and he tried doing everything he possibly could. And I'll tell you what, Aiden was one of the best interns we ever fucking had. And what did he do? Everything he was supposed to do and more. He'd stay after and he'd clean the gym. He'd come early and he'd set the gym up. I didn't ask him to do I told him to do one thing the whole time. It was the first day I said, listen, second you walk in, don't say a fucking word to me. Take out the trash. I said, I don't even need hey, Mike, how are you? Take out the trash. There's 3 trash cans. One in the front of the gym, one in the back of the gym, one in the fucking office. Take those out, then say your salutations. He did it every fucking time. Set up the gym every time. He was coaching clients all the time. By the end of it, I knew I could tell him to do X, Y, and Z. He would do it to the T. I wouldn't even have to watch him. I wouldn't have to supervise him. But that's what it takes, right? You have to go above and beyond. And he kept trying. He bought me a T-shirt because he heard the podcast of me talking about stuff like this, like, oh, try to buy these guys in, like try to win them over however you could. And I mean, he's a broke college kid. I wouldn't let him do any of that stuff, but he gets it. And he's going to do really, really well with whatever he does. But that's the mentality that you need to have. Like, you need to you need to have that whatever it takes mentality. It doesn't fucking matter. Whatever it takes to learn what this guy has, I will gladly give this kid any information he wants to know. Gladly. And it's because he earned it. He worked his ass off to get it.
Yeah, earning is the big thing, in interning. And everybody out there listening, he's right. If you want it, you have to, especially in this field, you have to just show up and be ready to do that stuff. And you don't even have to announce it. And that's how it should be. And I think, right at the beginning, you brought it up. I think that's missing. Nowadays we have a bunch of people, they're like, okay, I filled out the paperwork. I'm here. This is what I used to do. Give me what I want. And instead of, you shut up. When I was at TCU first month, I didn't talk. I mean, there was, you just don't do those things. You do the things why do you be remembered? When I was an intern, I had a friend who does, finance, but he said, you're down there to make them remember you and beat out the other 2 interns. And I was like, no, I want to be friends with these people. He goes, no. This isn't friends. You need to go down there and make yourself known. And that's what you're doing. And that's what, you brought up trying to take them out to dinner, doing all those things. You want to separate yourself because everybody's the same. Right? Everybody comes in with the same mentality. The biggest thing as an intern is you have to separate, and you have to work your ass off. There is no way around it. And I think people try to find a way around it. You're not going to get paid for 2-3 years. You're going to drink lots of coffee. You're going to eat a lot of Roman noodles. And that's how it is. And you're going to smell a lot of burnt rubber and, have pellets all over yourself. And that's just how it works, And I think that is one of the biggest things, to harp on. You have to do those things. You have to break your ass and you have to be there. And that's it, and you can't expect anything either. You can't come in and if I do this and this and this, I'm going to get this stuff, right? It's all, especially for me, I'm sure the same with you. Everybody that I've been in contact with, all the networking stuff, it's because of how I was as a person and what I did, throughout my time. It wasn't, I did anything special. It was just, you bring yourself and you make yourself known as a person and you make yourself likable.
Yep. Yeah. I think the make yourself likable is a very, very important thing. And it's not that you're not being genuine, right? But
yeah, of course, no, not be fake, but
yeah, but that's something that's very, very important, not just for the internship, but obviously, if you want to be a strength coach, there's a lot of sales, whether you like it or not. In order to get a job in another university, you need to sell yourself. And how are you going to sell yourself? Like, you could either be an arrogant prick, right? Like, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, obviously. But I mean, people want to hire someone that they like. Everyone wants to be around people that they like. Who wants to be around a person that they don't like? Right? Nobody. So, yeah. So, I mean, arguing, it's maybe not voicing your opinion every step of the way. Like sometimes you just do a lot more listening than you do talking. That helps an awful lot. Like you don't have to fill a void, fill a silence, right? With words just because. Sometimes, and if you're an intern, you got to understand that there's a strong possibility that you do not have the answer, and no one expects you to either. So you shouldn't act like it.
Yeah.
And doing stuff like that goes a long way in people liking you. Like, oh man, kid listens well, or yeah, he doesn't say too much. And if you don't say all that much, it can incriminate you.
Of course, and it makes you kind of mysterious, it always leaves more, and the other thing we keep bringing up, if you're going to get hired by this person, you're going to be with them for 18 hours a day. They're going to see you more than their kids, wife, whatever. So if they don't like you, I mean, it's not like an office job for 8 hours. You're stuck with this person for 16 hours, right? Then you add some conferences and little trips. You're stuck to these people. So, you have to be likable. Nobody wants to be around, as you said, an arrogant prick. You could be the smartest person in the world, but I mean, and there are some, you can get away with it. You can go that way, but you have to be genuine. You could be an arrogant prick with a dash of genuine, but you can't do that the whole time, I don't think.
Well, as I'm learning, I've been told, I don't happen to agree with it, but I've been told that I lean more towards the arrogant prick side.
Well, sometimes that is better. I think everybody who's a strength coach at one point or another, they did have an arrogant prick phase. It has to happen. You have to have that ability to kind of stand up for yourself or speak your mind when the time is right, though. I also think you do need that little bit of boost in there. So why don't we go through some of the stuff, at Pitt, you're in there, you're interning, you're there 20 hours a day, what are some of the stuff you did and kind of how did that change your philosophy in coaching, if you will, from coming out of DeFranco?
Learning how to actually program and develop speed and genuine and explosive power. When we were at DeFranco's, we did box jumps and we did speed squats and we did speed bench and we did some med ball throws, right? When I was younger. Now, a lot of that had to do with the fact that we just didn't have the space to run. But there was never even like an effort. And Joe started off at Parisi's. So Joe knows the Parisi's program, right? And we just never really did it. Never really did all that much running. It was just a lifting place. So when I went there, I realized the value of speed work and how and learning about Charlie Francis changed my life too. And how to program speed, and not just how to program speed, how to develop it and how to do it in season without taking away from practice. Or
love Charlie Francis. By the way, just a side note, if you haven't looked him up or you don't know who it is, you have to go look him up. He's amazing.
I make our interns, every intern that we have has to read 2 books. The Charlie Francis Training System by Charlie Francis, and the other one is Triphasic Training by Cal Dietz. That's probably 600 pages worth of reading. Every single one of them has to do that because I think the Charlie Francis Training System, being exposed to Charlie Francis, is so important if you actually want to do performance coaching, sport coaching. And then Triphasic Training, Cal Dietz does such a phenomenal job of breaking periodization down, breaking down the basics, and teaching you that, hey, you could incorporate different contractions of muscles, training them within your system in a block format. It's between those 2 books, I think you're exposed to so much. I love Charlie Francis. Charlie Francis stuff is phenomenal.
I couldn't, agree more. I use all the Charlie Francis stuff with in-season baseball players and the triphasic training too. Bringing that up, you have to train your athletes based on how they're going to use their muscles as they go through sequences and things like that. So you can't rely on one thing or the other. And I think books that break down those barriers, Charlie Francis, lifting heavy, doing things in season, being able to transfer power, being able to kind of keep that force velocity and all that stuff up while in season. I like all the stuff personally that blows people's minds or people kind of, or, ask you why you do that or think you're a little crazy, once you bring it out because they don't understand the stuff. Charlie Francis, if you go to a place where they're very kind of, conservative and you start having guys do, 6 sets of 1 deadlifts and stuff like that in the middle of the season, everybody loses their mind. And I think that's the best part.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And I also love the idea with the books, man. I mean, I think that people, you have to coach, but also you have to have a foundation and you have to have a correct foundation. And I think the combination of the triphasic and the Charlie Francis is a great foundation. And anybody out there listening, make sure you pick those books up and read, even if you are an intern or you're just starting out. They're awesome reads.
Yeah. Yeah. Charlie Francis quoted, he said, speed will drive the weights up. Weights won't necessarily drive up the speed. And I didn't understand that when James had first said that to me. But what it comes down to is force. The forces that you are exposed to at top speed are 4 to 6 times your body weight on one foot for tenths of a second. There is no way for you to simulate that in a squat rack.
Nope,
No way.
impossible.
And you're exposed to those forces. The exposure of those forces will help increase strength. And that's why sprinters will get so fast. Now, couple that with general strength training, absolutely. But where we miss the boat very, very frequently in our field is we think the opposite. Maybe early on, it's almost all the same, where speed and weights are very comparable as far as general physical preparation goes. So if you have someone sprinting, they'll get fast, and you have someone just lifting weights, they'll get fast. But that's early on. Once you have a decent enough foundation, I don't think it's interchangeable. I don't think one. I don't think it applies to both of them. I think it's just the speed aspect, and that's a big thing that I learned at Pitt.
Yeah, 100%. That general stuff, once that's over, you have to expose the body to the forces and the things that they're going to be doing on the field and to make them better. And there's right. You can't put 6 times your body weight on a squat rack. That's just, you'll crumple and die, So I think that is one of the biggest things, you need to kind of create that stimulus and you need to be at max velocity, and you can't recreate that with a squat rack, a deadlift, whatever you want to call it. So let's go into, at Pitt. So after leaving Pitt, where'd you go from there, and kind of how did you get started on kind of starting your own place?
So I went back to DeFranco's after Pitt for 4 years. And Joe had, in that time, I became Joe's number 1 guy. Joe wasn't there as much. He started training Triple H, and I took over a lot, which is what you're supposed to do when you have Triple H, right? He had a handful of pros. I ended up training a lot of the pros, majority of the pros, actually. There wasn't a pro in there, I don't think, during that time that Joe trained that I didn't train, with the exception of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Those were the only people of Joe's that I never trained. So Joe had gotten an offer from Onnit to move the gym down there, and he asked me, he says, "Do you want to go?" I said, "No." Like, I don't want to go to Texas. I said, "Do I get equity?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, hell no, I'm not going down to Texas." Like, no way. Which is totally fair on his part and totally fair on mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I was at a crossroads. It was either open a gym or wait for a pro job to open up. And I had just gone through a divorce. I was kind of in a weird spot. I didn't want to leave home. And I never wanted to open a gym. I've never wanted to own my own facility. I've always wanted to be a number 2, because I know with being a number 1, there's a lot of stresses and bullshit that you have to deal with. Like, I have to deal with overhead. I have $80,000 a year in overhead before I have to make $80,000 before I can put food in my mouth, essentially. Right? That's to break even. Right? So, and that's like not even including like paying employees or anything like that. That is flat out what it costs for me to run my gym. That's a high end. But like, that's a scary high end. And I knew that going into this. That's why I want to stay as small as humanly possible. And I want to be bursting at the seams before I even consider opening up expanding. So I said, screw it. I'm not going to wait. It was September, October. There are no job offers in September, October. They don't come until January. January and June is when guys get hired. So I was like, well, I'm not waiting all this time, my thumb up my ass. I might as well just open up a spot. And in that time at DeFranco's, I actually just posted about this on Instagram. Someone asked who my first pro client was. His name is Brett Carroll. I went to college with him. He was like a 42nd rounder. He knew how hard I worked as a baseball player took a gamble that I would work that hard as a coach, and then trained him for a year. He had a good year. He brought in one of his good friends who ended up being a first round draft pick. So that was my first big time client. His name is Shooter Hunt. Shooter Hunt was first rounder, huge. After that, I got a reputation for being a baseball guy, started getting a lot of college baseball guys. And then as being a baseball guy, people understand that you know how to rehab the shoulder. After that, I ended up getting this guy named Joe Torsha, who was supposed to be a fourth round pick tight end from University of Virginia. And he ended up playing, I don't know, he got signed by the Redskins. He never played it down with them, but that was a NFL guy, quote unquote NFL guy, that sought me out. Then after that, I ended up getting more and more guys, and before you knew it, I trained Hogan for his combine, and Hogan ended up being my guy when I left, or when DeFranco's closed, and I was forced to open up my own place. Hogan and Justin Tratow were training with me at the time, and they followed me there. A couple of other pro guys followed me there just because there was nowhere else for them to train. And then everything just grew from there. From Chris Hogan, I got Walter Powell. From Walter Powell, I got Quincy Enunwa. From Quincy Enunwa, I got Devin Smith. Right? Like, before you know it, one person led to five. And I've trained, since opening up on my own, I've trained guys from all 32 NFL teams. I've trained guys in the MLB, the NBA, the NHL, the MLS, the MLL. I haven't trained anyone in the UFC, but I have trained professional MMA guys. So that's how things just spitball. And now I have my own spot. I've been doing it we're in our 7th year of business.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you bring up, that you wanted no part of a facility with the overhead. That's one of the things with me too. A few times with being opening a place, I'm like, are you nuts? Overhead and all this stuff. Why would you want to do that? But as you know, it kind of happens, naturally. And then, one client leads to another, and then eventually you have yourself a business and have some guys coming in. So awesome success story. But I love how you're like, I don't want to do that. That's, if you heard Cressy says it, what's the biggest regret you have? He says, put my name on the building, because now you have to deal with everything and do all that stuff. So everybody out there that wants to open up their own place for fun, I'm like, it's not this bells and whistles. You look at all these hangars that people have, these beautiful places with full football fields in them. Those are great, but you got to go through a lot of stuff to get there. And, there's a lot of stressors and different things in the beginning too.
100%.
And if you know what you're doing, I mean, you just don't open up a place and everybody buys t-shirts and then, it's important. So why don't we go just a little bit of some of the things you do at Freak, just overall with your clientele. We talked about Charlie Francis, we talked about the triphasic, but just in general, some of the workouts and different things you do.
Okay. Oh, geez. So actually, with Freak Strength, what we ended up doing was, it's a more in-depth training than we had done at DeFranco's. My training sessions at Freak Strength now they're more inclusive, and I don't want to say you get more for your money, but I spend a ton of time with my guys. So if someone's injured, I spend a ton of time trying to get them, or someone's in pain, I should say. I spend a ton of time trying to get them out of pain. That's my main goal with a lot of these sessions, because if they're in pain, bad motor patterns are gonna be there. And at DeFranco's, I didn't really do much of that. But my name's on the door. Well, actually, my name isn't on the door. I did that intentionally, so people wouldn't look for Guadango; they'd look for Freak Strength. So it's my spot. I can do what I want now, and I'm not handcuffed. Although DeFranco never handcuffed me, he let me do whatever I wanted for the most part. So we will spend. I mean, I've had pro guys in there for 4 hours. If someone comes in and, oh, my ankle's bothering me or my foot's bothering me, all right, let's get you out of pain first. Let's see what we can do to reduce this pain so we can actually get in the session that we want to get in. I treat it a lot like trackside therapy, like, a Dan Paff or a Charlie Francis. Mm-hmm. And because I started getting into that so much, I got a lot of rehabs. I started getting referrals from like hospital for special surgery for return to play and things like that. And that inspired me to go back to school. Now I'm working towards getting my doctorate in acupuncture, because I want to be the one-stop shop, not just for sports training, but for everything. Like, I don't want them to have to worry about rehab, one place, and then come here for a massage and then go there for that and go to this guy for acupuncture. No, I can handle everything. At Freak Strength, we could handle absolutely everything. And someone said, well, why don't you just hire out to do that? I said, well, I'd rather be able to do it myself, because my job, my goal has never been to be a businessman. I've just wanted to be a coach that can do absolutely anything and everything. And I want my guys. Now, obviously, I won't be the world's best acupuncturist. I won't be the world's best strength coach. I won't be the world's best massage therapist or whatever. But I will be capable of doing all these things competently to get you to where you want to go in the least effort possible, right? The minimal effective dose of everything. So that's where Freak Strength is and is actually heading now.
I think that's fantastic. You bring up, you want to be one-stop shop, if you will, and I think it also starts with putting that work in, 4 hours with guys, stuff like that. Those are the things that you have to do to keep your clients. Everybody thinks it's getting them stronger or getting their ERA to go down or getting them to, run faster. I think it's the relationships and the time that you spend with your clients. And if you can learn that the more time you spend with them, the more care, if you will, that you give them. And also they recognize when you say, oh, hey, I'm going to go to school to learn how to do this, this, and this, or they all appreciate, when you're getting more knowledge because they know it's able to help them. So I think that's a great point you bring up, never stop learning and always try to find out how can you be better. If you're the best at strength, go learn how to do speed. If you're the best at speed, go learn how to, work on acupuncture, special medicine, and everybody in the field, all it takes is an email, Instagram message, and people will 90% of the time, answer a question for you. Just make sure it's a good question and, nothing crazy, but
don't waste their fucking time.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't waste their time. Not that questions are bad, but you have to understand they're all busy working 45 hours 45 hours a day, if you will, and to answer those questions. So, so why don't we just go through, in your opinion, what are some of the things you would like to see change in the strength conditioning / sports medicine field over the next 5 to 10 years? If you want to do maybe one strength conditioning and then one kind of on the acupuncture side, or you could do 2 strength, whatever you feel. So
James Smith told me this. He said that strength conditioning is going to be obsolete. And I think it should be obsolete. I think to have a strength coach should be obsolete. I think it's outdated, but I don't think it ever will be, because in order for that to happen, sport coaches need to learn strength conditioning. And I think they're too preoccupied with other things to have that foresight to be able to do that. And they think, well, I could just outsource it. But I think in order to become a competent skills coach, you need to understand loading. And in order to understand loading, you need to probably go through strength conditioning to start understanding the body better. I would really like it if something like that starts happening. So the strength coaches and what's going to end up having to happen is the strength coaches are going to have to start being skill coaches. So it'll start off something like, hey, strength coach needs to learn about wide receivers, and he needs to be the wide receivers coach specifically. I mean, look what's going on at Driveline.
Well, look at Cochran. Cochran just did that.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Cochran's some kind of skills coach
I think he's Georgia, maybe somewhere. I think. Yeah. And then Driveline. Yeah. With Kyle Bodie. Yeah.
Right. So it's not rocket science to do either one. You just need to make the commitment. I think that's very important. And from a general standpoint, from a fitness standpoint or from a sports standpoint, I think that the whole stay in your lane thing, I don't like it. Clearly, because I'm a guy that's trying to become the jack of all trades, but I don't like it. I've dealt with a lot of physical therapists and athletic trainers and other people that say, whoa, I handle this, you handle that, right? Rather than saying, well, let's educate each other on both of this so we can both, blend these lines a little bit better. I don't like to stay in your lane, but in order to avoid the staying in your lane, you need to fucking go to school. You need to do a lot of things. There's a lot of education that needs to occur. I think we're too territorial. I think that needs to stop. And I'm guilty of it too. My first instinct is to puff up my chest and show my fucking machismo type thing. But that's, you try to rationally block stuff like that out. But I think those two things would be huge. The staying in your lane thing is, it's upsetting to me, because it almost puts one person in, it forms a hierarchy, right? And there's a segregation. Segregations aren't good, hierarchies aren't good. Everyone needs to be working together rather than staying in your lane. Like, we need to hear each other out. Now, again, to be clear, I don't think some slapdick personal trainer should be doing rehab or massage or anything like that. You need to be educated in this stuff, but I don't think it's as black and white in regards to scope of practice as we like to make it seem. And that's one of the reasons why I chose acupuncture, because the scope of practice is so big. I can needle. Qigong and Tai Chi are movement. Like, that's what it is. It's the movement aspect. It's the physical therapy of acupuncture. Tui Na is the massage and the adjustments of acupuncture. We have cupping. We have moxa. We have herbology. Moxa is like heat. Herbology, we can prescribe herbs once we start learning about herbs. There's so, and then there's the surgery aspect of things, where we can actually assault you with needles. So that's why I like the acupuncture. So no one can ever really tell me to stay in my lane again, because I know personal training real well, or strength conditioning, or whatever the hell you guys want to call it. And I know the body and how to prepare it from an acupuncture standpoint. So this kind of gets me out of that stay in your lane thing. Though that's, yeah, those are my two big ones.
Yeah, the stay in your lane thing, definitely, I have an issue with it as well, because I think not only does it, create that pecking order you talked about, but also it prevents people from gaining knowledge, and I think that's the worst thing, because if you're at a place where you work with a PT who's a chest puffer, and they're like, oh, stay in your lane, that prevents that person from learning physical aspects of physical therapy, and I think if everybody understood as much as they possibly could, we would be better for the athletes or for the general public. And I think that's where everybody needs to kind of circle back in. It's not about how much I know or how much you know or everything else. We need to be able to work together, and we still have that kind of culture where you hide your stuff away. I'm not going to tell you how I got him to run a 40 faster or how I got Run to do this. And that's how it shouldn't be, where the ATs are all, they do this and that's what they do. And as a strength coach, I couldn't possibly know how to do manual muscle release or any of those things, and they get all mad. And I think that's something that has to be done, internally. We have to get rid of that. Exactly. Because we're trying to get everybody better. And there's no reason why a strength coach, right? Why can't we take the board AT exam? I'm just throwing it out there. But as you said before, with the education, if you have the proper education, you should be able to do whatever you want. There's no reason why we should be kind of cuffed, if you will, or, if you have a master's in kinesiology and you're a strength coach, there should be some kind of overlay to athletic training. I should, something like that, because now you get more knowledge. Not I have to go back to school and kind of rewind and go all the way back to having, an associate's degree, if you will, to come out of school like that. So I think those are phenomenal points. As long as that education's there, we should be able to learn as much as possible. We should want to learn as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that just comes down to sacrifice, though, too. As long as people aren't intentionally keeping you in the dark, you really don't have much of an excuse. I mean, I've had people that are successful call me crazy because I have a successful business, or a quasi-successful business, that I can scale and grow if I wanted to, and I went back to school. I decided to take 150 credits for my master's in acupuncture. That's just to get my master's, but because it's so many credits, I only have like 9 credits, or excuse me, 9 classes, nine more classes to get my doctorate. So as soon as I finish my master's, I'm eligible to take 9 more credits to get my 9 more classes to get my doctorate. But I wanted to learn, that I was willing to make that sacrifice, and it's supposed to be a 9-semester thing. I did it in 7 semesters, so I really robbed myself of time and money just because I want to learn. And now, on top of that, that opens up more doors for me, especially from an earning potential. But that's not necessarily why I did it. I did it more so to unlock the doors of knowledge, to let me start doing what it is that I want to do. I wasn't able to take, when Graston first came out, they wouldn't let me take their course
Oh no,
because I
yeah.
was exercise physiology, but I needed to be an athletic trainer or this or that, which is fine. You have your credentials and your prereqs for your certification, but I wasn't able to do that. Now, nothing can stop me. I am a medical health professional, and I didn't even have to take the Graston course because excuse me, scraping, gua sha. That's what gua sha is. Graston ripped off gua sha. Gua sha is, you ever see like the old school Chinese scraping techniques?
Yeah.
That's all Graston is. Take a fucking butter knife and, rub your body with it, right? It's instrument assisted soft tissue massage. That's all it is. There's now maybe Graston has another technique to it that I'm unaware of. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. But it all stems from gua sha.
Yeah, I think those are the things you have to research, and you have to kind of understand where you want to go and hunt for knowledge. I think that's an awesome point. You want to be able to learn every day, and we all need to do that because it changes. You've been in this for 10 years. I've been in it or longer. I've been in it for about 10 going on 11, and it changes all the time. When I first came in, we did leg extensions. Now people throw up when you say that sometimes, and now, there's all this other stuff. So the field is constantly changing, and I think you have to change with it, and that thirst for knowledge, but also understand the prereqs.
100%.
So for anybody that wants to get into the field, or think about starting up, what piece of advice would you give them is the number one thing in your opinion to do?
I don't know. I mean, you have to be hungry for learning, but there's nothing, that's a generic answer. I don't think I have anything too specific. You just need to understand that you're not going to know everything, and that's the goal, and that the more you know, the less you know, and that when you're 26 years old, you don't know nearly as much as you think you know, and you know even less when you're 35 than you did when you were 26, right? So, I mean, if when I was 26 or 25, you asked me to train Usain Bolt, I would have guaranteed that I could get him faster, right? But now I'm 34, going on 35, and I don't know what the fuck I would do to make this guy faster. Maybe I have an idea, maybe I don't.
I don't think you can get him to
People
go
ask me,
much faster.
yeah, like people ask me what I do with Kevin Love, and I mean, my thought process is now is, well, he's Kevin Love. What the fuck am I going to do for Kevin Love? I just got to keep Kevin Love healthy. So I need to stay out of Kevin Love's way. I mean, that's all I did with McCourty, right? McCourty's been with me for 5 or 6 years now. And so far, I think multiple times throughout his career, he's hit the top speed numbers in the NFL. And he's 32 years old. I think he already hit a top speed number of over like maybe 20 or 21 miles per hour, something like that, where he'll be in like the top 10 fastest plays in the NFL in a year. And what am I doing for him? Am I making Devin McCourty faster? I don't know, but he stayed fast, so I'm not hurting him,
Yeah.
So, but you ask me when I'm 26, like, oh, I'll do this to make him fat. No, I don't know. Now I don't know. I guess and being humble isn't what it is. I don't think being humble's. I guess Kevin Love always says this. He quotes Anthony Bourdain to be relentlessly curious, right? Like you always want to be relentlessly curious, and I think that's really important to always want to learn and grow and understand why. I think understanding the why might be it, right? If you always try to get to the why, then you'll rather than just, hey, this is black and white and just because, that's never been good enough for me. I think maybe understanding the why would be what's the why? What is that? Simon Sitek or whatever his name?
Yeah, Simon Sinek, yeah. And then he wrote Leaders Eat Last, I think was the second book after that.
Leaders Eat Last. I like that.
Yeah.
I heard a quote one time that example was the bedrock of leadership. And prior to that, like I've never been a vocal guy. I was always forced to be a vocal guy. Whenever I was a captain, they're like, "Oh, you got to be more vocal." I'm like, "I'm just not. I don't know what the fuck. My vocal stuff doesn't resonate with people. Like I'm a hard motherfucker and stuff. Like, let's go, pussy. Like, and people don't respond to that. So I've always been the guy that, hey, just shut up and do your fucking work. Like, I don't necessarily want to hear you. So that's just how I go about my business. So I try to do everything that I do now is leading by example. That's how I try to lead my coaches at Freak Strength. I just try to set the right example every step of the way. And when I fuck up and one of them fucks up, but they did exactly what I did, I can't get upset with them. I need to fix me first.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think that's
that was a lot. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. I know. I want to explain it. Like I said, I mean, usually it's, you get, a lot of regular answers, but I think that's great advice. You always have to be curious no matter what you will be, because I think being that way will always, bless you, will always, bring you to where you want to be. If you come into a gym and you're curious about what's going on with the exercise, the program, you're going to figure that out. And then eventually you're going to be able to kind of manipulate that, or you're going to be able to run that program, right? But then if you want more, it will lead you into internships and other people's systems, if you will. And then what that does is you create your own philosophy. And I think that constant curiosity is great, because that's where it keeps you, always wanting more. It never makes you stale as a coach, and it will always keep you kind of driven, because if you learn one system, you do that one thing, and that's it, I think you're handcuffing yourself. And I think it's great you brought up that, with Kevin Love, you just do, you keep him as Kevin Love, because that's one of the things too. Not all strength coaches, when they train people, when you get to that upper echelon, you're not doing stuff to make them this way or that way, or, fly, you're keeping them at where they are. A lot of them, they don't go to a strength coach, to get faster. He doesn't want to jump over the backboard. He wants to maintain and play, and I think that's something that gets lost a lot of the times too. Oh, well, this person does this. This is what so-and-so does to get faster. I'm like, well, they're already naturally that way, genetically and stuff. And then now you just need to kind of keep them, where that is and perform at the highest level.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, or maybe I'm fucking wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm just doing it wrong, and maybe I'm holding these guys back. Fuck do I know? I just don't know anything anymore, and that's the scary part, where I am always second guessing myself now. Everything I do is like, yeah, I'll do this. I have some data on this saying that this seems to go in this direction, and all right, I'm okay. And when I don't trust my gut, that's when I really fuck up. Like, if the back of my head, it's saying, cut it there. And the kid's like, hey, let me do one more. And I cave. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. But listening to my gut is a big thing. It's like the intuition, because we always have that little bit of data collected in our head that's being processed. And it's the reason why our gut is telling us one way, or to think one way or another,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that gut instinct, but you're right. I mean, I was talking to my friend the other day about this. The more you learn, you kind of figure out the more you don't know, and there's kind of that push and pull with being curious all the time, where you want to gain all this knowledge, but a lot of times you'll do something some way, and then you'll find something and read it, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know anything. I have no idea what I'm doing, and then we have to kind of go through that. But I think that keeps us hungry. But I completely agree. There's a line where, at some point you're like, oh my God, I just figured this out. I know nothing, and then you start that process all over again.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I had to figure it out too, and then I was 29, and then I listened to a bunch of Louis Simmons stuff, and I was like, I'm going to quit. I'm going to be, I'm going to go in another direction, because, you have to learn these things, Then I started reading Charlie Francis, and the same thing happened. And I'm like, oh God, this is a whole nother batch of stuff to deal with.
Yeah, this is the last thing, then I got to run. I had Mike Boyle on my podcast, and the way Mike Boyle and I became friends, or friendly, or acquaintances that actually, had a correspondence, was I knew a guy. His name is Pete Kane. I guess he's the athletic trainer for Northern Highlands, and he exposed me to Mike Boyle when I was young. And he said, you're doing all this strongman stuff. Mike Boyle did this back in the 70s and the 80s, or whatever the hell. He's been there, done that, and he's way more conservative now. So I grew up thinking Mike Boyle was a pussy. So I said on the Mind Muscle podcast, which is, I guess, one of the bigger fitness podcasts in Australia. I didn't know it at the time. And they asked me about stuff, and I said, yeah, I used to think Mike Boyle was a huge pussy, and now I'm kicking myself because I agree with a lot of the stuff that he says. And Boyle ended up tweeting at me. He says, hey, glad you don't think I'm a pussy anymore, man. And I was like, oh, damn. I didn't realize, the reach the podcast had. But
Mhm.
I mean, there are guys that have been there and done that. And he's been around I think he's been doing this for like 40 years or so.
Mhm.
I mean, the amount of experience that he has and the times that he's gone full circle. And people will rag on Mike Boyle, say, oh, he always changes his mind. Like, he never gives you he never gives you an answer, or every 5 years he changes his mind, or even sooner. It's like, well, fuck you. He ain't God. The fuck does he know?
Mhm.
But I think that's really, really valuable to understand that, like, you just don't know it. I had Dan Paff on, and Dan
Love him.
Paff,
Love him.
he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And
I was with him for 3 days. I interned at Altis, and he was
the best.
fantastic. Yep.
And he went on a story about how he came up with these med ball exercises that he thought were very, very unique. He thought they were super special, and they were awesome. And he created them. They were his brainchild, right? He went overseas to some Eastern Bloc country, and he opened a textbook when he was talking to some track and field coach, and there was the exact med ball circuit, like exercise for exercise, that he conjured. Like, he didn't read it; he just came up with everything. He's like, man, I guess I'm not that far ahead of the curve, because these exercises are from like the 50s and 60s.
That's humbling experience. So if anybody wants to, contact you, get more information, ask you a question, where's the best way to do that?
So my Instagram is at Guadango, Guadango, or at Freak Strength, or at Mike and Brooker. I have a website, freakstrength.com. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter at Guadango, at Freak Strength. My podcast is the Mike and Brooker Show. It's a rapidly growing podcast. It was stagnant for a while, and then all of a sudden it just started booming. So we have some really awesome guests on there. Those guys that we have on are usually way sharper than I am. But if guys want to get in touch with me, those are the places to do it. Or if you want to hear more about me, those are the spots.
All right. Well, I'll definitely put the Instagram handles when I post the this podcast episode on the Instagram, and definitely check that podcast out. It's great information and a lot of amazing guests. Mike, I can't thank you enough for coming on, man. I enjoyed it, man. It was a lot of fun, and I just loved the conversation.
Joe, thank you so much, man.
You're welcome. Thank you.